So this video is just a bit of a format video to help you out with nutrition assignment too. Just to answer any common questions you may all have, and just to help you with a little bit of structure for the assignment and how to set it out. So first of all, obviously the submission deadline has changed. So the submission deadline is actually here, the 7th of March. As it's an online submission only, it can come in like at 11:59 at night. As long as it's in the Monday, it doesn't matter. Okay, so next thing you need to look at, we have 5 grading criteria, and as you can see, 2 pass, 2 merit, and 1 distinction. So I'm going to talk you through the tasks to achieve these now and how you should probably set them out. So you need to describe how energy is measured and the sources of energy to the body. Okay, so to achieve that, you need to describe how body mass is measured and the positives and negatives of each method. So we went through 4 different ways of measuring body mass, and these included your skin fold analysis, your bioelectrical impedance analysis, your hydrostatic weight or hydroantimetry, and also body mass index or BMI. So positives and negatives of each. However, also source of energy to the body. So you should be able to utilize your knowledge from assignment 1 for that. So the 3 macronutrients and how many kilocalories they give you per gram. Excuse me. Also, if you ever need to define anything, don't forget on Blackboard, right here is the nutrition chapter. So the nutrition chapter, any definitions you want. So start from 10.2 because this is purely on energy. And any definitions you want are in here. Gives you the amounts, everything you went through and what's in your book. This should be your first protocol, okay? So there's your sources there. Just said that didn't highlight the right bit. There's your sources there. So you should be utilizing this. All key terminologies that you may need are all within this chapter. Any information, like I said, come to this chapter first. I cannot stress that enough. Right, okay. That's P3. So P4. So describe the 5 factors of energy balance. So we considered the 5 factors previously, which were gender, age, physical activity level, climate, and BMR. So what you need to do is how will each influence kilocalorie requirement in sport. So an example of this is if a male was to play a game of rugby and a female was to play a game of rugby, and they're both doing the exact same things within the game, the male will naturally burn or require more kilocalories within the game because males naturally require more kilocalories than females. This is largely due to an increased muscle mass, increased body mass overall. Therefore, more kilocalories are needed to power the male. Just do that for each 5, and that's P4, nice and easy. Then you get to what we were utilising the study task for. So explain the intake and energy expenditure for 2 sport performers. So utilise your workbook, which is on Blackboard if you've lost it. You need to come up with a gender, an age, and a weight in kilograms for your athlete. You then need to work out how many kilocalories they require for their specific activity, which should be on that table. So work out their BMR through the Schofield calculation, like you would have done for the study task. Once you've got their BMR, you need to add on the kilocalorie requirements. Now you do this by looking at that table, and that table shows you how many kilocalories are burned for those different activities per different weight per hour. So for example, if you were looking at something like basketball, which obviously isn't an hour-long sport, is a 40-minute sport, what you need to do to work that out is divide whatever the kilocalorie amount is by 60 and then times it by 40. So you divide it by 60 because there's 60 minutes within the hour, and then times it by 40 because you've already worked out what 1 minute equals by dividing it by 60, and then timesing it by 40 will give you the 40 minutes. And then you would do that for any difference. So like with football, for example, this 90 minutes, you divide that by 60. You would then times that amount by 30 because a football match is 90 minutes. So you've got the 60-minute amount and the 30-minute amount, add them together. Or obviously you could just divide the amount by 2 because we know half of an hour is half an hour. and then add the two together. But that's how you would work that out. Once you've got the kilocalorie amount, you need to pick like a kickoff time or a game time, because that's going to change how your diet works for your athlete. So, for example, if there's like a lunchtime kickoff, um, their breakfast is going to have an awful lot of a lot more food in it than it would if it was a nighttime kickoff. Because breakfast is probably what's going to really fuel them. If they're playing sport at like 12 o'clock, their breakfast was the most important meal for them. Whereas if they're playing sport at like 5:30 at night, lunch would be that most important meal more than likely. So take that into account as well. Use MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal will ensure that you work out the exact amount of kilocalories in the meal as the energy expenditure. Make sure they're as close as possible to one another. I know it's hard to make it exact, but please make sure they're as close as they potentially can, your diet and the energy expenditure. You also got to consider the glycemic index and two different types of carbohydrates. So don't just have a fully high glycemic index breakfast where all the energy gets burned up too quickly. Mix them up, and that will give a more effective meal. Now you need to explain the importance of the meals you've planned and how they relate to sport. So why have you mixed up the different types of carbohydrates in that way? Why does your athlete need simple carbohydrates? So examples of this are, just before the sport, why is this snack maybe a pack of Haribo, a 10p pack of Haribo? Why is it not spaghetti bolognese? So you would go into talk about how it's a high glycemic index food, how it'll give them the initial burst that they need. It'll break down very quickly, therefore they won't get a stitch. Therefore they'll be optimally energized and ready to go. If you gave them a spaghetti bolognese, obviously it's not going to break down in time, so it's not going to give them energy, first of all, because it's slow releasing. Also, it's going to give your athlete a stitch. So you've got to think about the impact that has on performance, because think about when you've had a stitch when you're playing before. If you've got a stitch, you're not thinking about the performance properly. Therefore, like your performance just goes down. Please give exact examples from the sport if you're going for the higher criteria. So if you're using the stitch as an example, talk about how, if say you're looking at football and you're a central midfielder or a box-to-box midfielder, talk about how if you're tracking the person you're marking and how if you've got a stitch, you're not going to be able to keep up with them, and therefore that could create a goal scoring opportunity for the opposition. Make sure it's very, very sporting specific. When you're relating to the sport as well, I've already put on here, but if you look, I've told you sort of linked to technique and decision making. If you've got optimum energy, your technique's going to be really good because you're not fatigued. Your decision making is going to be really good. Therefore, obviously, your performance is going to increase or be improved. Can you give exact examples of that as well? How that could affect, please? Um, please make sure you don't mention like protein in terms of recovery or like fat in terms of protection or thermoregulation. The assignment is purely about energy. So feel free to talk about like recovery, but talk about having enough energy to recover, because obviously it takes energy to repair your muscles and repair any damage that you've taken following sport. So if you're going to talk about recovery, talk about the replenishing your glycogen stores and how it's important to make sure your glycogen stores are topped up, ready for training the next day or ready for another match maybe. And what would the consequences be if your glycogen stores weren't topped up? So you haven't recovered properly, bigger risk of injury, you won't perform very well the next day, etc., etc. These are things you need to be considering when going for that. I've with the analysis part, I put analyze sport and effect of the sporting performers. So look at both sportsmen. And now what I want you to do while looking at both sportsmen is give really bad diets for them. So I know a lot of you in the study task looked at things like McDonald's and things like that, which is fine. It is poor, but think of it in terms of energy as well. So that's doing things like having the spaghetti bolognese just before performance, or doing things like having just sugar, like pure sugar for breakfast, so you're burning off the energy really quick, and then you don't have it anymore. Because obviously a really good example of a breakfast could be something like porridge with sugar on top of it, because the sugar's a high glycemic index, which breaks down really quickly, giving you instant energy. But you've got the porridge oats, which break down slower, giving you a more constant energy over the morning. So they complement each other really well. But say they would have like a bar of chocolate for breakfast, obviously that'd be really bad for them. They wouldn't be prepared for sport and performance. Um, Make sure it's in the format of an article, please. I don't want to be resubbing anyone because it's not an article. Now, it's not hard to do it in an article style. I literally just want things like bullet pointed or mix up your presentation methods. So, like I said, bullet points, tables, lots of images, lots of color. Obviously, you can have paragraphs and things like that as well. But if you mix that up, it'll look like an article. So, if you look at sources of information, utilize MyFitnessPal. Look here just for an idea of what an article can look like, just to give you a bit of inspiration. I'm telling you here what the measuring requirements are. Things that affect energy balance. There's the 5 things we discussed earlier. And basically, everything's here to help you. Utilize this video, read the front sheet properly. Like I said, use this chapter really well. And just utilizing everything at your disposal to the best of your ability will give you the best chances for succeeding in this assignment.